Welcome to the Dungeon Brew Coffee Tavern, where every cup tells a story, and every story starts with a sip. Join us on a journey of adventure, camaraderie, and of course, the finest brews, served hot and steeped in mystery. From dragons to ancient legends, we're brewing up more than just coffee. Today's tale begins as the group steps into a vast, echoing chamber. The corridor behind them vanishes into shadow, sealing them within a place that feels less like stone and more like memories made real. Now, grab your mug, settle in, and get ready for the next chapter in our brewing saga. Episode 17, Echoes Beyond the Threshold, Part 2. The air shifted as they stepped into the central chamber. The narrow corridor behind them closed off, the walls seeming to blend into the shadows, leaving only the vast expanse of the room before them. The space was cavernous, more a cathedral than a chamber, and the ceiling stretched high above, vanishing into the blackness like the night sky. Every inch of the stone floor hummed with a low, rhythmic pulse, as though the very heart of the temple was alive. The sound resonated deep within them, not quite audible, but felt. It vibrated in their bones and their breath, a steady thrum that stirred the air. The stone walls were etched with faint glyphs and markings that pulsed in time with the hum, their meaning indecipherable but undeniably ancient. In the dim, flickering light of their torches, the shadows seemed to dance, stretching unnaturally long as if the darkness itself was reaching for them. At the center of the room, bathed in an ethereal light from above, stood a pedestal. It was carved from dark stone, the surface worn by time, yet the symbols on it were still sharp and clear, symbols of steam and flame intertwined in an eternal dance. A shallow bowl rested atop the pedestal, its surface smooth and empty, waiting. The bowl was simple in design, but the markings surrounding it held a strange power, a sense of expectation. For a moment, no one moved. The group stood in a silent formation, their eyes drawn to the pedestal, then to each other. There was a palpable tension in the air, an unseen pull drawing them closer to the heart of the chamber. They were no longer just explorers. They were intruders in a place that seemed to have been waiting for them. Java was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper.
What is this place? Why does it feel so familiar?
Fate stood apart from the group, her eyes closed as if listening to something far beyond their reach. Her staff glowed faintly, the symbols on it responding to the energy in the room. When she opened her eyes, they were dark, shadowed with something that seemed both ancient and knowing. Her voice, when it came, was soft, reverberating through the chamber like a quiet bell tolling.
This place remembers you all, though none of you have ever been here before.
The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The group exchanged uncertain glances, their previous trials still fresh in their minds. They had all felt the trials, the echoes of their pasts, and now, this. A place that remembered them, yet none of them had set foot here before. It was as though this chamber had been waiting for them, as if their arrival was inevitable. Nived stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he gazed at the pedestal.
Remember us? How could it? We've never been here. Have we?
His voice faltered, the doubt in his words mingling with the weight of the chamber. Fate didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked toward the pedestal, her steps deliberate, as if each one was meant to be felt by the stone beneath her feet. When she reached the pedestal, she placed her hand lightly on the edge of the bowl, her fingers brushing the ancient carvings. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a sense of recognition in the way she moved, like she understood the language of this place in a way they did not.
I cannot say why it remembers you, but this place is not of your world. It exists beyond time. And it has called you.
The group gathered behind her, each one stepping closer to the pedestal, drawn by the weight of her words. Patches hesitated, her eyes lingering on the empty bowl, but there was a deep unease in her gaze, something felt wrong. She could not place it, but it was there, a creeping sensation at the edge of her awareness. Bradicus broke the silence with a grunt.
Called us? For what?
His eyes darted between Fate and the bowl, curiosity winning out over suspicion. Fate did not respond immediately. Instead, she closed her eyes once more, her breath deep and steady. It was as though she was listening to something far beyond them, something ancient, perhaps older than even she was willing to admit. The air grew heavier, the hum from the floor vibrating with an intensity that made the walls seem to shift. Then, almost imperceptibly, the stone bowl on the pedestal began to glow. A faint, pulsing light emanated from within it, slow at first, but growing stronger with each passing second. The symbols on the pedestal seemed to come alive, glowing in response. Fate opened her eyes, and they gleamed with a cold, distant understanding.
You are here because you have already made the choice. This place does not offer choices, it only reveals them.
At her words, the pedestal hummed louder, the light within the bowl pulsing more rapidly now, almost impatiently. The group exchanged uncertain looks, each of them feeling the weight of her words settle heavily upon them. And then, without warning, the symbols on the pedestal began to shift, as though the stone was alive, rearranging itself. The bowl filled with a soft, glowing mist, swirling with colors they had never seen before, colors that seemed to shimmer with an unspoken promise. Steam rose, curling upward like the breath of some unseen creature. The group stood frozen, the reality of the moment pressing in on them from all sides. The hum from the floor grew louder, louder still, until it felt as though the room itself was breathing with them. Fate finally spoke again, her voice carrying a strange weight, something ancient in her tone.
This place remembers you all, because you are the ones who must remember.
The hum reached its peak, and for a moment, everything went silent. Then, without warning, a crackling energy filled the room, and the light from the pedestal flared, blinding. When it faded, the room had changed. And they knew then, deep within their bones, that nothing would ever be the same. The group stood in tense silence as the room hummed around them, the energy of the chamber pressing in from all sides. Fate's words still lingered in the air, thick with the weight of their meaning, and the glowing mist in the bowl seemed to pulse in time with their collective heartbeat. Java, drawn by an unseen force, stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the pedestal. The key in his hand felt warm against his palm, vibrating gently, as if it was alive. He held it out over the bowl, watching the light catch the polished stone. Without warning, the key jumped from his fingers, a burst of energy racing from his hand, dissolving into thousands of motes of golden light. The motes swirled around the room, vanishing as quickly as they had appeared, leaving only the faint shimmer of their absence. Java's claws twitched, his gaze following the glowing trails that seemed to vanish into the very air. He blinked, confused.
It just vanished. The key gone.
Before anyone could respond, the shadows in the corners of the chamber shifted. The darkness itself seemed to undulate, as if something unseen was moving through it, creeping toward them. A chill washed over the group, though no breeze stirred. The shadows stretched unnaturally, their forms flickering in ways that should not have been possible. They flickered like a dying flame, restless and alive. Bradicus, ever the protector, stepped forward, his hand on the hilt of his weapon.
Stay sharp. We're not alone.
Patches tensed, her ears flicking at every sound, her hand instinctively reaching for a potion that wasn't there. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She glanced at Fate, who had yet to draw her staff, though the Norn's eyes were focused on the shadows with a sharp, unspoken understanding. Nived growled low, his fiery gaze scanning the room. His natural instinct to burn something, to fight, flared up, but there was nothing solid to strike. The shadows simply moved, ebbing and flowing in the edges of his vision, never fully taking shape. And then, a whisper, soft, distant, but unmistakable. It was the voice of someone long forgotten, or perhaps someone never known at all. It slithered through the air, threading between their thoughts, curling around them like smoke.
We shared fire once, and stories. And now you've come to light the last brew.
Java's breath caught in his throat. The words resonated with him, no, not resonated. Echoed. A memory stirred deep within him. Not a memory of a past they'd lived, but a memory that felt like it belonged to someone else, a moment by the campfire, a flickering flame that cast dancing shadows across a worn map. There, a figure had sat with them, their voice a melody that hung in the air like an old song. Java's wings tingled at the edges of the recollection, as though the image, the sound, the warmth of that moment had never fully faded.
I remember. Not us, but someone else. A story. It wasn't real, was it? But it felt so real.
Fate, who had been standing in the shadows herself, turned her head slowly, her eyes gleaming with the ancient knowledge that only she seemed to possess. She fixed her gaze on the corners of the room where the shadows twisted and writhed, something ancient lurking just beyond their grasp.
You still watch. You still wait. But not yet.
The room fell into a tense silence, as though the very stone was holding its breath. The shadows ceased their movement, stilling in response to her words, but their presence remained unseen, yet deeply felt. There was a weight in the air, an expectation that hummed beneath their skin. Java's heart raced, and his claws trembled at his sides. The memories that had surfaced were unsettling, like fragments of a dream half forgotten. The whispers, the figure by the fire, it wasn't just a figment of his imagination. It was a memory of something, someone that had been here before. Fate's gaze never left the corners of the room, but her expression softened, just barely, a flicker of something old and sorrowful crossing her features.
It is as it has always been. A visitor lingering between worlds. It is never far, but it waits, not yet.
Bradicus shifted uneasily, his hand still gripping his weapon, though his eyes flickered between the shadows and fate, seeking answers.
Who? What are we dealing with, fate? This presence. It feels like we've crossed a line that was never meant to be crossed.
Fate did not answer him immediately. Instead, her staff flickered in her hands, a soft glow rising from its tip, illuminating the room in a faint, otherworldly light. She took a slow step forward, the shadows recoiling, unwilling to meet her gaze.
It is not a what, it is a who, or perhaps, more accurately, a when. An echo, a remnant of something that has existed long before any of you walked this world. It watches, waits, and it has waited a long time for you.
Now, we have a brief break to hear a word from our sponsor. Welcome, adventurers, to the Dungeon Brew Coffee Tavern, where every cup is a quest, and every sip, a story. Start your day with the boldness of rogues rolling thunder, Guatemalan beans aged in whiskey barrels, delivering a brew as daring as a rogue's escapade. For those with a sweet tooth, Bard's-inspired hazelnut offers a harmonious fusion of rich hazelnut and decadent chocolate, reminiscent of a bard's sweet serenade. Not a coffee connoisseur? Our artisan teas, like the delicate moonlit jasmine or the comforting cider harvest, promise a journey through flavors both exotic and familiar. Craving something enchanting? Dreamspell chai awaits, blending bold spices into a potion that stirs both body and soul. Join the Dungeon Brew crew and wear your passion proudly with our exclusive gear. Embark on your flavor adventure today at dungeonbrewcoffee.com. Dungeon Brew Coffee, brewing with initiative, rolling with life.
The weight of her words sank into them, and the air grew thick with the understanding that whatever they had stumbled upon was far older, far more complicated than they could have imagined. The shadows, for now, had stilled. But the tension remained, a reminder that even in stillness, something was watching, waiting. And they were not alone. The chamber hummed with a subtle energy that seemed to vibrate through the floor, the air thick with the weight of decisions yet to be made. Java stood at the pedestal, staring down at the empty bowl. Its stone surface shimmered faintly, its ancient symbols glowing with a soft, welcoming light. The bowl seemed to pulse, as if anticipating something that only Java could bring. The shadows in the room, once restless, had stilled entirely. The silence that hung between them felt charged, the kind of silence that precedes the heavy, irreversible moments in life. The echoes of fate's words, still lingering in the air, mixed with the pulsing hum of the room, pressing down on Java's chest. It was his choice. A voice, gentle but insistent, echoed in his mind, a question not spoken aloud but felt. What do you want? Not what was expected of him. Not what was needed or demanded. But what he truly wanted. The question was simple, yet layered with the weight of all the choices he had made and all those still before him. Java's heart beat faster. He glanced at the others, Patches, Bradicus, Nived, and even Fate, their eyes filled with anticipation. They, too, waited for his answer, though none of them spoke. They knew this was something Java had to choose for himself. his mind drifted. The first vision rose before him, a quiet scene in the tavern, a crackling fire in the hearth, the rich scent of brewing coffee filling the air. He was behind the counter, pouring a cup for a familiar face. The laughter of the tavern echoed in the background, the clink of mugs, the soft murmur of friendly conversation. But then, as quickly as it appeared, the vision shifted. The tavern faded, and a new scene bloomed, a wild landscape, green fields stretching under a golden sun, an open road waiting for him. Adventures yet to be had, stories to unfold. Java could see himself walking beside his friends, the smell of the open air mixed with the sharp, spicy scent of Nived's seasonings, the warmth of Bradicus' laughter, the calm of Patch's steady presence. A life of freedom, of choice, of possibility. And yet, another vision flickered, a different path. The ancient chamber, the pedestal, the swirling energy. Unlocking the full potential of this place. Power. The ability to change things, to reshape the world in ways unimaginable. A future where he controlled the flow of fire, where he could create, command, what he willed. A power that would burn brightly, but at what cost? The weight of each possibility settled into his chest like stones, each one heavier than the last. The tavern, his friends, a life lived in the warmth of shared moments and laughter. The road ahead, uncertain and thrilling, but his. And then, this place, this ancient power, a wellspring of possibility but also danger. He could feel the pull of the fire within him, the warmth of his flame, and the uncertainty of what it would mean to wield it in this place, to unlock its full potential. The question still hung in the air, unspoken but loud in his mind. What do you want, Java? He looked around the room again, his eyes locking with each of his companions. Fate's expression was unreadable, her hands resting lightly on her staff. She didn't offer him guidance, but something in her gaze told him that this was his to decide. She would not steer him. The others were silent, waiting, but they, too, knew that his path had to be of his own choosing. The weight of the decision, of his decision, felt like it was closing in on him. His fire, his gift, had always been something that had defined him, but here, in this place, he had to decide what that gift truly meant. Could he take the power, the potential it offered, or would he walk away and carve a new path with his friends? Java's gaze shifted down to the bowl again. A strange calm washed over him, cutting through the turmoil of his thoughts. He knew what he had to do. Slowly, with careful deliberation, Java reached into his pouch, pulling out a single roasted coffee bean. It was small, humble, a simple thing, but one that carried so much meaning. It had been the first bean he had ever roasted, the first step toward the life he had chosen. The life he wanted to build. He placed it into the bowl. At first, nothing happened. But then, the bean began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter, until it ignited with a soft fire. The air shifted, the warmth of the flame filling the room. A rich, earthy scent wafted through the chamber, the deep, comforting aroma of coffee, mixed with the warmth of courage and the promise of new beginnings. The fire in the bowl pulsed gently, and Java felt his chest swell with a mixture of relief and certainty. This was his choice. The fire, the bean, it was a symbol of what he was willing to create. Not the power of this place, not the unknown potential it offered, but a life built with his own hands. A voice whispered, its tone soft but powerful, like the crackling of a fire at the start of a new day.
Then let it begin.
Java smiled, his heart at peace for the first time in what felt like forever. He had made his choice. In the future, whatever it held, was his to shape. With that, the flame in the bowl burned brighter, its glow filling the room. The hum beneath their feet deepened, as if the chamber itself recognized his decision. The others watched, understanding dawning on each of them. Java's path had been chosen, not just for himself, but for all of them. Together, they would build something new. And as the light from the bowl grew brighter, the room seemed to exhale, as if releasing a breath it had been holding for centuries. The chamber trembled softly beneath their feet, the floor shuddering with a quiet pulse that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the room. The walls, once cold and still, now hummed with life that flowed outward, coaxing them toward the door that had appeared before them. It wasn't violent, not the way an earthquake would be. No, this was more like the subtle stretch of a waking giant, a shifting that suggested the world itself had taken a deep, grounding breath. Java stepped forward, his claws tapping softly against the stone as he moved toward the door. He glanced back once, his eyes meeting those of his companions, Patches, Nived, Bradicus, and Fate. No one spoke, but there was a quiet understanding that settled between them. Whatever had happened here, whatever they had just experienced, had changed them all in some way. But it hadn't broken them. Not yet. With a final, gentle push, the door opened, releasing a warm, golden light that wrapped around them like a cloak. The air was thick with warmth, sunlight, fresh and welcoming. They stepped through the threshold, leaving the cold stone of the chamber behind. And as they ascended, they felt it, the weight of the moment lifting, the world unfolding anew around them. When they emerged into the light, it was as if they were waking from a long dream. The familiar sight of the crossroads greeted them, those same twisting paths that led to their tavern. The breeze felt softer here, the scent of the earth richer. Behind them, the ruins had vanished, no lingering stone or echo of the chamber remained. It was as though it had never existed, swallowed up by time, or by something far older. All that was left was the peaceful quiet of the crossroads. Java shifted his pouch, and his gaze dropped to the empty leather inside. His heart stilled for a moment, and then his fingers brushed against something different, something cool and smooth. He pulled it out slowly, his eyes widening as he saw it, a small vial, its contents shimmering like liquid starlight. The brew inside danced and pulsed with a soft glow, its surface shifting in the light.
What is that?
Java held the vial up to the light, his eyes tracing the gentle glow. He didn't know. He only knew that it was his now. That it was something they had earned together. A gift, perhaps, a reminder of the choice he'd made. Fate, her eyes still scanning the horizon, was the first to speak.
We are not alone, but we are known.
Well, I'm not sure if that's a blessing or a curse.
I think it's both. We've seen things no one else has. But maybe that's why we're meant to do this. All of us. Together.
There's always more to the fire than we can see.
We've got something to share, then. And we've got something to build.
They stood in the stillness for a moment, each of them allowing the weight of the words to settle between them. The crossroads before them was unchanged, a familiar place now, a place that had somehow bridged the gap between the depths of the chamber and their current position. Time had folded around them, and they had crossed from one reality into another. The gentle click of Java's pouch reminded them of the peculiar weight in his hands. He reached down, feeling the familiar leather, but when he opened it, there was nothing except a strange, faint warmth that radiated from within. Confused, he closed the pouch and looked at the vial in his hand. It shimmered faintly with liquid light, something so vibrant and full of promise. Java muttered under his breath, turning it over in his claws. It felt important, but how or why, he wasn't entirely sure.
Not sure how that happened.
Another mystery. One we'll figure out later, I'm sure.
Guess it's time to return then.
And so they walked. It was strange how everything felt different now, more alive, more real, somehow. The air seemed to welcome them as they made their way to the tavern, but not in a way that spoke of haste. They didn't rush, there was no need. The road ahead was steady and calm. The crossroads guided them, but it wasn't as though they were physically moving faster than before. The journey felt more like a realization, a return. The wind carried the unmistakable scent of their home ahead, the rich smell of spices from the kitchen, the scent of ink and parchment, the warm, inviting fragrance of freshly baked bread. It was their own tavern, the place that had once seemed like a distant dream, now standing tall and welcoming before them. As they neared the door, it creaked open, no forceful push, just a welcoming, familiar motion. The wood groaned with age, but in that groan was comfort, as if it had known them longer than they had known it.
Always feels like coming home.
Home!
Guess it's time to get to work.
I think that's the least we can do.
Plenty of things to season.
Nived stretched, the air filling with the faint scent of mulled cider, his gaze already fixed on the door. Fate stepped forward, the last to move, her footsteps light but sure. She glanced back one last time, her eyes thoughtful but not sad.
Everything that ends is simply the beginning of what is to follow.
With that, She turned and led the way through the door. Java paused just for a moment, looking at the vial in his hand once more. There was still so much to learn, so much to discover. But whatever came next, he knew it would be theirs to face, together. With one final breath of the warm, welcoming air, he followed his friends through the door and into the light. The tavern awaited them. And whatever stories they would tell them together. The door clicked shut behind them with a soft thud, and the familiar sounds of their tavern filled the air, the crackle of the fire, the faint hum of the hearth warming the room, the low murmur of the night wind outside. The scents they had missed so much were here again, wrapping them in a comforting embrace. Java looked around, taking in the room as though seeing it for the first time. The fire danced in the hearth, its warm light casting soft shadows on the wooden walls. He set the vial down on the counter, the shimmering liquid inside casting a faint glow. It was an odd thing to hold, like something that had always been with him, and yet, something entirely new. He ran his claws along the edge of the bottle, lost in thought. Patches stretched out her arms with a sigh, relief flooding her as she felt the solid ground beneath her paws. She made her way to a nearby chair, settling down in front of the fire.
Well, that's one journey down. I think we've earned a bit of rest, don't you?
If nothing else, we've earned a good night's sleep after all that. A few hours in a real bed will do wonders.
Bradicus, rubbing his hands together to feel the warmth of the fire, nodded. Fate didn't immediately sit, though she moved closer to the hearth, watching the flames with quiet intensity. Her thoughts were her own, but even here, in the comfort of home, there was a lingering sense of something untold, something not quite finished. She spoke, voice soft but steady.
There are many paths ahead of us. Some we've already walked, others still waiting to be discovered.
Nived, sitting at the edge of the table, curled his tail around his feet. He gave Fate a thoughtful look but said nothing, his gaze drifting to the fire. His mind, too, was far from still, stirred by the trials they had just endured. The visions, the choices, everything felt like it was shifting.
I don't know about all of you, but I'm ready to cook up something new. Something we haven't tasted yet.
Always thinking about the next meal, eh, Nived? Guess we'll have to see what's in the pantry next time. Though, I'll be honest, I'm more in the mood for a drink than another trial right now.
A drink sounds good to me too. Maybe tomorrow we can figure out what this vial does. But for now, a good night's sleep seems like the best plan. We've all earned it.
They each settled into their own space, Fate drawing herself into the shadows by the window, Patches reclining with her legs tucked under her, and Bradicus making his way to his usual spot near the bar. Java, for once, didn't feel the need to rush. His usual impulse to brew something new was quiet, satisfied, at least for the moment. They had their time to rest. As the night wore on, the fire flickered low, and the room grew quieter. Fate's words about the paths ahead echoed in their minds, but they allowed the weariness of their travels to settle into their bones. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new mysteries, but for tonight, they could simply be together. Patches let out a contented sigh, her eyes closing as she drifted off into a deep, peaceful sleep. Bradicus leaned back in his chair, his hands folded over his stomach, eyes half-lidded in a relaxed haze. Nived's tail flicked lazily behind him, his thoughts wandering, but his body still and at peace. And Java, who had always been restless, felt something inside him ease, like the final piece falling into place. The vial still glowed faintly on the counter beside him, but for now, he simply allowed himself to be. Tomorrow, the mysteries could wait. The night wrapped around them, the fire crackling softly in the hearth as they finally rested from their travels. And somewhere, beyond the soft glow of the tavern's windows, the world waited for them to return, to grow, and to face whatever was next. But for now, home was enough. The fire is low, the mugs are empty, and tonight's tale has come to an end. But the journey is far from over. Thank you for gathering with us at Dungeon Brew Coffee Tavern, where adventure brews with every sip. Join us next time as new challenges arise, mysteries deepen, and the magic of the tavern unfolds. If you enjoyed this taste of adventure, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell so you never miss a new episode. We'll save a seat for you at the tavern. See you soon.